Hey guys, my name is Bogle, and I'm going to be helping you along this virtual painting journey. I'm a quadriplegic and use a wheelchair, so when it comes to things like painting, for people with disabilities, physical and mental, you have to do things a bit differently, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So with my disability and being a quadriplegic, using a wheelchair, not having a lot of use of my arms and zero use of my legs, when it comes to painting, I do things differently. I'm not able to use my hands to use a regular paintbrush. So when it comes to this for me, I use something called a mouth stick, which is literally a stick that you put in your mouth, you connect a paintbrush to it, get close enough to canvas, as you can see back here behind me, where you can use your mouth to paint, and that's how we get started. I've personally been doing mouth paintings for about a decade now. I became a quadriplegic about 11 years ago and did my first painting shortly after that. I took a couple of years off, did another painting, took another couple of years off, did another painting, and then I started getting more into it, enjoying it more, realizing that it was not just creating cool art, it was also kind of a type of mental therapy for me when I kind of get away and forget everything that's going on around me, which is pretty cool. So that's a nice avenue of painting. But enough about me. Let's dive in and see how we create an actual painting. A few items and adaptations that I use to allow me to successfully paint are things like this easel, which has tons of adjustments on it for placement so that you can make sure and get your canvas exactly where you need it to benefit you, so that you can reach it. You don't have to strain yourself or be uncomfortable while you're creating this masterpiece. This particular easel allows me to get in a perfect spot where I can reach everything that I need to. Because when I'm painting, I'll be sitting here for, could be 3, 4, 5, 6 hours straight. So I don't want to be hurting my body or straining myself too much. I want to make sure that I'm comfortable and that everything will go smoothly, so that after I'm done with this and in the following days, I won't be hurting from creating this piece of art. So this is the mouth stick that I mentioned. It has this mouthpiece here that has these soft rubberish pieces on it so that your teeth are not squeezing on hard plastic. This particular mouth stick allows me to slide paintbrushes right into the end. There are other types of mouth sticks that you can kind of clamp a paintbrush on the side, but this one allows me to slide paintbrushes right into the end. If your paintbrush is not quite thick enough to slide in and stick where you need it, in the past I have wrapped tape around the paintbrush to make it a bit fatter, and then that will slide in and allow it to stick in the end of this mouth stick right where you need it. I do know other mouth painting artists who don't even use a mouth stick. They will just put a paintbrush straight into their mouth and use it like that, and that will just come down to personal preference, what works best for you, what feels best, and how you are most comfortable. The front of this easel has a little drawer that pulls out, which allows you to have water and your paints right there in front of you below the canvas. Personally, I need it a little bit higher, so I just slide this drawer out, put the shoebox there, set my paints, paper towel, and water right on top of that, and that puts it at the perfect height for me to reach my paints, reach my water, clean off my brush if I need to, change a color, and then get back to my canvas without having to set my mouth stick down. But if I do need to set my mouth stick down and take a break, I'm also able to set it in my water cup, drink some water, rest my mouth a little bit, and then reach my mouth stick and get back to the process. When it comes to painting my backgrounds, I like to use a bigger brush because that allows you to cover more surface more efficiently at a faster pace. But unfortunately, most of the bigger brushes are thicker as well, which makes it hard to get them to stay in a mouth stick. If you have somebody who is able to help you out, they may be able to file down the tip of these paintbrushes kind of like this, and that will allow it to slide right into the end of your mouth stick and use that bigger brush that is necessary. One of the first steps of actually creating a piece of art is figuring out what you are going to paint. That can be tough. For me personally, I grew up on the water, on and off of sailboats, down in the Caribbean and the Bahamas. So my biggest inspiration is bright colors, nautical themes like fish, birds of paradise, and just things from my childhood, which has to do with a lot of aquatic animals and things of that nature. So that's where I pull my inspiration from. But for you, you just need to look into your life and your past and what makes you feel good and figure out what you want to paint. So here I am pulled up to my easel, and usually what I do, similar to our friend Abby, is pull up a picture, a representation of what I would like to complete. Today it is going to be a palm tree. I'll have it somewhere off in the background over here where I can just kind of glance at it, and I'm not going to be doing an exact representation and copy of this picture, but it gives you some guidelines, something to aim towards and create something similar. But it's nice to have that because sometimes in the middle of a painting you will kind of get lost and forget the direction you wanted to go in. So if you have something like a picture to look over at and kind of get back on track and say, oh, I should add this here, or do a little bit more shading here, or blend those colors more to do something like that in the picture. It's very helpful, so I would highly suggest that. So what some people do when they're painting, they will, prior to starting with paint, they will sketch it out with a pencil or something like that that's kind of faint that you won't be able to see, to make sure, get their design down, make sure it's how they want it, and then either erase that or just start painting right over it. Me, myself, I don't do that. What I'll do is I'll just stare at the blank canvas for a while and figure out the structure of how I want to create this in my mind, and then I'll use little dots kind of like this and map out how and where I'm going to paint. I guess you could kind of call it a method of sketching, but I don't think it's been trademarked yet. And that allows me to figure out where I'm going to place everything and start creating. Sometimes you need to help the paint along on its drying process so that you can add another layer if you need to darken it up, or if you're just worried about when you start your next color on your next part of the design, you don't want them to blend and mix in. You just need to make sure that the colors are dry so that it won't affect your color goal. So you may need to blow on it a little bit. Also, the beauty of my easel setup with my water cup right here, it allows me to easily set my brush down where it is still accessible to me without having to use hands, since I'm unable to use mine for this purpose. So I can set it down right here, blow on my artwork. If my mouth just needs a break, or whatever the case may be, I can do that by setting it right here and then very easily grab it again and get back to work. Depending on the colors you're using, you'll often have to layer them and make sure that they cover and hide the color of your canvas or your paper, or whatever color is behind the color that you're using. So that's when setting my brush down and being able to blow on the paint to dry it comes in handy, so that I can more quickly get on to the next layer and make sure that the color is covering like I want it to. So I like to get the overall structure and foundation down first, kind of the base colors, the main colors, and then start working from there and adjust with adding more detail, adding shading, adding color blending to kind of make it all come together by the end of it. But I definitely start with just the base colors, get the foundation down, something I can work on, and then start perfecting it from there. So the beauty of painting and art in general is that it gives you the opportunity to do and create whatever you want. You don't really get that chance in life a lot to express yourself and create what you want and what's in your mind. So that's the pretty cool thing about this, is that when the brush and the paint touches the canvas, it's just you. You can do whatever you want. You may think that you have messed up on whatever your kind of end vision of your piece of art was going to be, but you can alter that and you can work with that and adjust and adapt and react and still create a beautiful piece of art. It may not be exactly what you were aiming at in the beginning, but you still have the opportunity to create something pretty awesome, which is very cool, and I think why I enjoy painting so much. So this all comes down to personal preference, but I personally like using canvas as opposed to just basic paper. I feel like the texture of a canvas kind of helps guide your paintbrush. When paper is a little more smooth, I find it easier to kind of slip up and not create the exact lines that you're hoping for. But all personal preference. Not everybody prefers a canvas. So you just got to figure out what works best for you. So like I said, I like to get my base colors down, kind of build the foundation of the artwork, and then once you get the main idea onto the canvas and you can see it starting to come together, it's not going to look great. Almost every time I paint, I don't like the product until just about the very end, when I'm able to add all the details and shading and more colors. So don't be discouraged by what your artwork looks like in the early stages. Just keep that vision of what you want to create by the end and keep working towards it. Keep adding colors. You can always add more layers, add more colors, and like I said, the detailing and the shading is very critical for creating your artwork and making it come to life by the end. Since I'm doing a palm tree, it'll be different for whatever artwork you are personally painting, but a palm tree, it'd usually be out in the sun, so I'm thinking about where the wind is blowing from, which side the sun is facing, and that dictates where I do a lot of shading and where I add a few more light colors to make it seem like the sun is hitting it from this angle, and if the sun was hitting it from this angle, where would it be shady? It would be shady over here. All right, so I'll dab a little bit of black, and you don't want it too thick for the shading, so I'll just dab it off on my paper towel that I have under my water cup, and gently and slowly apply it where I'd like the shading. Make sure it's the darkness that I'm looking for. If not, I'll add a little more black. If it's a little too dark, then I'll dab it off a little more and make sure I get the correct color, because you don't want to cover too much of what you're done in black if that's not the part that you would like to cover with the shading. Like I said, the black, the accents, the shading really gives it depth and brings it to life by the end of the painting. So go ahead and play around with some of that shading. And here, by the end, we have a pretty decent looking palm tree. So I was doing this a bit quicker to show you guys. Usually a painting will take me anywhere up to possibly 6-7 hours, multiple days. So I kind of knocked this one out a little quicker. But you know, by the end, adding these details kind of brings it to life, and it still comes out looking pretty good. I hope this video has been educational for you and that you've been able to learn something about painting, whether you will be using a mouse stick like myself or using your hands. I hope you can take something from this and create an absolute masterpiece. So good luck!